The night shift at Mercy General. I need to tell someone what happened at Mercy General Hospital. I need to get this out before I lose my mind completely, before the memories fade or twist into something I can convince myself never really happened. My name is Marcus Webb, and until 3 weeks ago, I was a patient transporter at Mercy General. I'm writing this from my apartment, door locked, lights on, because I can't stand the dark anymore. I can't stand the silence. Let me start from the beginning. I took the night shift because it paid better. Simple as that. Student loans weren't going to pay themselves, and the overnight differential was an extra $3 an hour. $3 might not sound like much, but when you're 28 and living paycheck to paycheck, it's everything. The job was easy enough. Transport patients from their rooms to surgery to imaging to wherever they needed to go. Push wheelchairs, push gurneys, smile, be professional, clock out at 7 in the morning. Mercy General was built in 1952, a sprawling concrete giant that had been added onto so many times over the decades that the layout made no logical sense. Hallways ended abruptly, stairwells led to locked doors. There were entire wings that had been closed off, deemed too expensive to renovate or demolish. The hospital was a maze, and during the day, with doctors and nurses and visitors filling the corridors, it was just an old building with quirks. At night, though, it was different. The fluorescent lights hummed differently after midnight. Some of them flickered in patterns that almost seemed deliberate. The heating system made sounds that were just a little too organic, a little too much like breathing. But I told myself it was just an old building settling, pipes expanding and contracting, the normal sounds any structure makes when it's mostly empty. I started in August. By October, I knew every shortcut, every elevator that actually worked, every nurse's station where they kept the good coffee. I got along with the skeleton crew on nights. There was Denise, the charge nurse on the 4th floor, who always had a story about her grandkids. There was Paolo, the security guard who did his rounds like clockwork and always stopped to chat about whatever game was on that night. There was Jennifer in radiology, who hated the night shift as much as I did, but needed the money just as badly. We were a small tribe in those dark hours, keeping the hospital running while the rest of the world slept. The first time I went to the 7th floor, I didn't think much of it. It was a Tuesday, around 2 in the morning. I got a call to transport a patient from 7 South to the CT scanner, room 734. I remember thinking it was odd because the 7th floor was supposed to be mostly administrative offices and storage now, but I'd learned not to question the system. If the computer said there was a patient in 734, there was a patient in 734. I took the service elevator up. The doors opened, and I stepped into a hallway that was darker than it should have been. Half the overhead lights were off, leaving long stretches of shadow between dim pools of illumination. The floor was older than the ones I usually worked on. The linoleum was that sickly green color they used to put in hospitals decades ago, scuffed and cracked. The walls were painted a shade of beige that had yellowed with age. It was quiet, too quiet. My footsteps echoed as I walked down the corridor looking at room numbers, 710, 712, 714. The doors were closed, but I could see through the small windows that the rooms were dark and empty. No beds, no equipment, nothing. I kept walking. 730, 732, 734. I stopped in front of the door. There was a light on inside. I could see it glowing through the small window, warm and amber, different from the harsh fluorescent light in the hallway. I knocked softly, then pushed the door open. The room was empty. No patient, no bed, just an empty room with peeling paint and a single bulb hanging from the ceiling, swaying slightly even though there was no breeze. The light cast moving shadows on the walls. In the corner, there was an old wheelchair, the kind with metal armrests and leather straps, covered in dust. I stood there for a moment, confused. I pulled out my phone to check the transport request. Room 734, patient name William Reeves, DOB 03-17-1949, destination CT scan. I looked back into the room. Nothing. I was about to call the nurses' station when I heard it. A voice, soft, distant, coming from somewhere down the hallway behind me. Help me.
I turned around. The hallway stretched out before me, those alternating pools of light and shadow, but I couldn't see anyone. The voice, it sounded like an old man, weak and desperate. "Hello?" I called out. Silence. Then again, "Help me, please." It was coming from further down the hall, past where I'd come from. I started walking toward it, my shoes squeaking on the old linoleum. The overhead lights seemed dimmer than they had been a moment ago, or maybe it was just my imagination. "Where are you?" I called out. "Room 741. Please help me." Room 741. I walked faster, passing empty room after empty room until I found it. The door was slightly ajar, and I could see darkness inside. No light at all. I pushed the door open wider. "Hello? Sir, are you okay?" As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I could make out the shape of a hospital bed, and in that bed, I could see the outline of someone lying there, completely still. I reached for the light switch on the wall. My hand found it. I flipped it up. The fluorescent light stuttered to life, and I saw him. He was old, his skin so pale it was almost translucent. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. His mouth hung slightly open. He wasn't breathing. I knew immediately that he was dead, had been dead for a while. But I had heard him speak. I had heard his voice asking for help. I backed out of the room, my heart hammering. I pulled out my phone and called security. Paolo answered on the second ring. "Paolo, this is Marcus. I'm on 7th South. There's a deceased patient in room 741. No one's up here. I don't know what's going on." There was a pause. "Marcus, 7 South has been closed for renovation since June. There shouldn't be anyone up there. Are you sure you're on 7? I looked at the room number again. 741. I looked at the elevator bank at the end of the hall. 7. "I'm sure. I came up here for a transport to 734, but the room was empty. Then I heard someone calling for help and found this room." Another pause, longer this time. "I'm coming up. Don't touch anything. Don't go anywhere." I stood in the hallway, my back against the wall opposite room 741, watching the door. The body inside hadn't moved, of course. Dead people don't move. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that feeling you get when someone's staring at the back of your neck. Paolo arrived maybe 5 minutes later, but it felt like an hour. He had his flashlight and his radio, and he looked as unsettled as I felt. "Show me," he said. I pointed to room 741. We walked in together. The lights were still on. The body was still there. Paolo approached the bed and looked at the man's face. He frowned. "Jesus," he whispered. He picked up the man's wrist, looked at the hospital bracelet. "William Reeves." My blood went cold. That's the name on the transport request. Paolo looked at me. "This man died 4 months ago. I remember it. He was a long-term patient, dementia, no family. He coded one night, and they couldn't bring him back. He shouldn't be here. His body shouldn't be here." We both stood there, staring at the corpse of William Reeves. The fluorescent lights hummed above us. And then, from somewhere down the hall, we heard it. A wheelchair, squeaking, moving slowly. Paolo's hand went to his radio. We both moved to the doorway and looked out into the hallway. About 30 feet away, the old wheelchair from room 734 was rolling down the center of the corridor, by itself, moving steadily toward us. "What the fuck?" Paolo whispered. The wheelchair rolled past us, its wheels squeaking rhythmically, and continued down the hallway until it disappeared around a corner. Paulo grabbed my arm. "We're leaving, now!" We didn't run, but we walked fast. We got back to the elevator bank, and Paulo jabbed the button repeatedly. The elevator seemed to take forever. I kept glancing back down the hallway, expecting to see something coming toward us, expecting to hear that voice again.
The elevator finally arrived. We got in, the doors closed. Neither of us spoke until we reached the ground floor. When we stepped out, the main lobby was bright and normal. The security desk, the volunteer at the information booth, the vending machines humming quietly. Reality. Paulo made some calls. Administrators were contacted. At 6 in the morning, just before my shift ended, a team went up to the 7th floor with Paulo and me. We took them to room 741. The room was empty. No body, no bed, just an empty room with peeling paint. They checked the other rooms. Room 734 was empty too. No wheelchair. The administrators chalked it up to a system glitch. The transport request must have been some kind of error in the computer. As for what Paulo and I saw, well, we'd been working the night shift. We were tired, stressed. Old buildings make strange sounds. Shadows play tricks. They suggested we take a few days off, get some rest. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to think it had been my imagination, exhaustion, my brain making connections that weren't there. But I knew what I'd heard. I knew what I'd seen. And the elevator finally arrived. We got in, the doors closed. Neither of us spoke until we reached the ground floor. When we stepped out, the main lobby was bright and normal. The security desk, the volunteer at the information booth, the vending machines humming quietly. Reality. Paulo made some calls. Administrators were contacted. At 6 in the morning, just before my shift ended, a team went up to the 7th floor with Paulo and me. We took them to room 741. The room was empty. No body, no bed, just an empty room with peeling paint. They checked the other rooms. Room 734 was empty too. No wheelchair. The administrators chalked it up to a system glitch. The transport request must have been some kind of error in the computer. As for what Paulo and I saw, well, we'd been working the night shift. We were tired, stressed. Old buildings make strange sounds. Shadows play tricks. They suggested we take a few days off, get some rest. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to think it had been my imagination, exhaustion, my brain making connections that weren't there. But I knew what I'd heard. I knew what I'd seen. And so did Paulo. He quit 3 days later, just stopped showing up. I tried to call him, but his number was disconnected. I should have quit too, I know that now. But I needed the money, and some stupid part of me wanted to prove that I hadn't lost my mind, that I could handle it, that it had been a one-time thing. The 7th floor stayed in my head, though. I found myself thinking about it during my shifts, wondering what else was up there in those dark hallways. I started asking the nurses who'd worked at Mercy General for a long time about the 7th floor. Most of them didn't know much, or claimed they didn't. But Denise, the charge nurse, she told me something. That floor used to be long-term care, she said. Patients who weren't going to get better, the ones with nowhere else to go. They shut it down in the 90s when they built the new wing. A lot of people died up there over the years. It was just the nature of the unit. But there were rumors. She paused, measuring her words. Rumors that some of the staff weren't as kind as they should have been, that some patients were neglected, that some of them called for help that never came. I asked her if she believed in ghosts. She looked at me for a long moment. I believe that buildings remember things, especially places where people suffered. 2 weeks after the incident with William Reeves, I had another transport request, this time to the 6th floor, room 623, just 1 floor below. I almost refused, almost told them to send someone else, but it was 4 in the morning and I was the only transporter on duty. The patient needed to go to the OR for an emergency procedure. The 6th floor was still active, still in use, but it had the same old building feel as the 7th, the same green linoleum, the same yellowed walls. Room 623 was at the far end of the corridor, and as I walked toward it, I felt that same heaviness in the air. The patient was an older man, unconscious, intubated. His name was Richard Chen, according to his chart. I unlocked the gurney wheels and began pushing him toward the elevator. The night nurse who'd helped me transfer him had already gone back to her station. I was alone in the hallway with Richard Chen. As I pushed the gurney, I heard it again, that voice. But this time, it wasn't asking for help. This time, it whispered, "She's coming." I stopped. The voice had been close, right next to my ear. I looked around. No one, just me and the unconscious patient. I started pushing again, faster now, wanting to get to the elevator and down to the OR where there would be people and lights and normalcy. "She's coming," the voice said again, more urgent. The overhead lights began to flicker. One by one, starting at the far end of the hallway, they went out. Darkness rushed toward me like a wave. I ran. I pushed the gurney as fast as I could, the wheels rattling over the uneven floor. The lights continued to go out behind me, darkness chasing me. I could hear something else now beneath my own panting breath and the sound of the wheels. Footsteps, heavy, running. I reached the elevator and slammed my hand against the call button. The lights above the door showed the elevator was on the 3rd floor, going down. "Come on, come on, come on," I muttered. The footsteps were getting closer. The hallway behind me was almost completely dark now. I could see a shape moving in that darkness, something tall and wrong. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. I shoved the gurney inside and jumped in after it, hammering the door close. The doors began to slide shut. In the narrowing gap, I saw her.
A woman in a nurse's uniform from another era. White dress, white cap. Her face was pale and slack, her eyes completely black. Her mouth opened impossibly wide, and I heard a sound that I can't properly describe. It wasn't quite a scream. It was more like wind through a tunnel, hollow and endless. The doors closed. The elevator descended. I stood there, shaking, my hands gripping the gurney's rails. Richard Chen's monitors beeped steadily, his ventilator whooshing. He was still unconscious, unaware of what had just happened. When the doors opened on the ground floor, the OR team was waiting. They took the patient, asked if I was okay, because I must have looked absolutely terrified. I told them I was fine, just a little dizzy. I finished my shift. I went home. I sat in my apartment as the sun came up, and I made a decision. I was done. I called in sick for the next 3 nights. Then I sent an email to my supervisor saying I was resigning effective immediately. Personal reasons. I didn't care about the money anymore. I didn't care about anything except never going back to that building. But here's the thing. Here's what keeps me up at night. Lights on, door locked. Last week, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, old and yellowed. It was a patient roster from Mercy General Hospital, dated October 1953. 7th floor, long-term care wing. Someone had circled a name in red ink. William Reeves, room 741. And written at the bottom in shaky handwriting were 4 words. "You heard me. Thank you." I don't know who sent it. I don't know what it means. But I keep thinking about what Denise said, about buildings remembering, about patients who called for help that never came. Maybe William Reeves had been calling out for decades. Maybe his voice echoed in that empty hallway until finally, someone heard him. Or maybe I'm losing my mind. I don't work at Mercy General anymore. I got a job at a warehouse, loading trucks during the day. Bright fluorescent lights, concrete floors, the radio playing too loud. It's perfect. But sometimes, late at night, I wake up from dreams I can't quite remember, and in the silence of my apartment, I hear it, distant, barely audible. The squeak of wheelchair wheels on old linoleum. The sound of something rolling closer in the dark. And I know, deep down where truth lives, that I brought something home with me from that 7th floor. Something that won't let me forget. Something that maybe just wanted to be acknowledged, to be remembered. Buildings remember, Denise said. But what she didn't say is that sometimes they don't let you forget. I'm writing this as a warning, I suppose, to anyone who works at Mercy General, especially on the night shift. Stay away from the 7th floor. If you get a transport request up there, refuse it. If you hear voices calling for help, don't go looking. Don't try to help. Because once you open that door, once you acknowledge what's up there, it acknowledges you back, and it doesn't let go. My name is Marcus Webb. I used to work at Mercy General Hospital. I don't know how this ends. I don't know if it ever ends. But I had to tell someone. I had to tell someone before the lights go out for good.